everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Devil's Advocate Trades Edition. Today joining me is Kyle Craik. Is that right?
Craik, yeah.
Craik. Hi, Kyle. Welcome to the
Hey,
show.
how's it going? Yeah,
It's
thanks for
going
having me.
wonderful.
It's fun to be here.
You know what? I did a few podcasts before I became a host, and it was really nerve-wracking to do some of them because you're like, do I look okay? And some of the podcasts I did, I look like a crazy person. Like I didn't have my house set up properly or my office set up properly. It was like really dark. I probably looked stoned in a couple of them. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know.
I'll be honest. I'm much more comfortable in the host position as well. So hopefully I don't disappoint here for you.
Oh, you probably won't, because what's fun about having someone who's also a podcast host is that we can just bounce off each other because we know what it's like to fill in the dead air points when you're talking to somebody and then all of a sudden they just kind of stop and there's like that little moment of silence and you're like, so anyway.
100%. And also, I don't know about you, but I've really learned to embrace the silence as well. It's something that I struggle with when I first started podcasting.
Yep.
And now it's like sometimes the silence is the beauty in the conversation, I think.
Well, sometimes it can be, but then, we're in this generation now where everybody's like, what's happening? Especially if you're listening, like if you're not watching the video, people get all freaked out and they're like, what's happening? Why is there a pause? So sometimes when I go off on my own little tangent podcast on my own, I will like pause because I'm looking for something and I'll say it though. I'll be like, listen, and they can hear me clicking on my computer and I'm like, I'm looking this up. I didn't do my research. I'm a fucking moron. And it airs and people think it's hilarious. I mean, they think it's funny. So I mean, like, I'll go with it. Okay, tell me about you, because we're going to talk about good grief. But right now, the cool thing that I like is that you are also a podcast host. So tell me about your podcast. Tell me what you guys talk about.
Absolutely. So I'm the host of the Wellness Dojo podcast. The Wellness Dojo is my company here in Calgary, Alberta, where I do martial arts and wellness coaching. Through my years of martial arts, starting as a 5-year-old, kicking off in martial arts and continuing to do it today. I'm competitive, a coach, and just love the sport and love the principles that it offers. The podcast itself really is just an outlet for me, an opportunity for me to do exactly what we're doing here, to just have great conversations and to be able to share those conversations with other people. So I bring on a variety of guests, including I've had artists, psychologists, coaches, authors, you name it, because I really do believe that wellness is life and that there are so many different aspects of life that tap into this kind of buzzword wellness that we're living in right now.
I love that you said that. So like, it's true. It almost seems like wellness is a buzzword. But I think what happens is when you're someone who actually truly dives down the rabbit hole of wellness and all of that it encompasses and all the different levels, I think that's when you kind of get the right to kind of say wellness. You know what I mean? Like people are like, oh, I eat clean. I'm all about wellness. And it's like, I don't know. You know what I mean? But when you're
There's layers.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, it's like the new fad. And wellness isn't a fad. It's mind, body, and spirit. And I had my son in martial arts. I had when he was really little. I started him when he was 4 in jiu-jitsu. And then COVID happened. So no more jiu-jitsu. And he didn't want to go back. So
yeah, that's tough. Martial arts is just it's been such a foundational sport for me in terms of developing just who I am as a person and also just giving me the tools to be able to navigate many of life's challenges that I have faced and that I even continue to face today. I'm constantly going back and being like, okay, like what tools do I have to navigate this and to approach this in a more positive way and come out of it stronger? And a lot of those things come back to things that I've learned through martial arts, principles that were instilled in me through that.
I think what a lot of people don't understand about martial arts is that it's a lot more than just learning a technique. And I think that's what happens is you get these parents that are like, oh, I want my kid to be able to kick someone's ass. It's like, it's more than that. And that was one of the big things that I really loved about Tyler being in the martial arts space, my son. And it was teaching him discipline and patience and being spiritual and having respect. There's so many life lessons inside of martial arts and sports teams that people don't realize. And I think that unless you've done it yourself and you've been an athlete, or you've been someone that, I mean, I guess that would be considered an athlete, right? When you're in martial arts.
Yeah.
So when you're someone when you've been an athlete, full tilt, not just, like we played volleyball on the weekend, like you've been a part of a team and got your ass kicked by your coach, you really value what it brings in, like how everything is encompassed. So I love that. I love that you're doing a martial arts thing and that you own your own company. Where is it? It's in Calgary?
It's in Calgary here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
do you train all ages, or just like, are you focused on a group?
All ages. So basically starting from like 4 years old, like when your son started, and all the way up to adults. We've got adults that are coming in even in their 60s and trying it for the first time. And it's just a super cool thing to see adults step into that uncertainty and step into that new realm of something, to risk looking foolish. Like, it's not an easy thing to do. So it's really cool.
You know what? I really wanted to do jujitsu, but I totally have like effed up my left leg. Like it's just so what happens when you do competitive sports.
Yeah.
So my patella subluxates, and so I went to go do kickboxing 2.5 years ago, and it subluxated, and I've been down for the count since. I'm
Hmm.
like even just doing regular groceries, I get nervous and I have to have my brace on, even though my like sports med is like, Lisa, you need to do these exercises in order to strengthen your leg. And then if you strengthen your leg, it's also strengthening your core and then your back. And I'm like, listen, just let me be a fat kid for a little bit.
Well, this is one of those things with wellness, right? Is it's kind of I mean, we're putting ourselves in a position by being active, by being athletic. You're putting yourself in a better position to be healthier, to be more resilient when you do get sick, if that happens and it's out of your control.
Yeah,
When you do get injured, you're in a better position to bounce back. But at the same time, you're also putting yourself more at risk for injury. You're putting yourself more at risk for those types of things, especially doing sports like jujitsu and, like me, kung fu and karate and those types of things.
yeah,
Like, it's high risk, high reward.
I agree. So tell me, what types of martial arts do you specialize in or that you do?
So primarily I teach kung fu. That's what I've done since I was 5 years old.
Hmm.
I've dabbled in other martial arts as well, like jujitsu, kickboxing, karate, all of those different styles.
Yep.
But kung fu has always been the main discipline that I've learned and taught.
I love that. Your business must have been booming when Kung Fu Panda came out,
Yeah, you always do see like an interesting spike with like the Kung Fu Panda, the Cobra Kai's, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
right? I know. I think if I was to do like, and Kung Fu was really big also when the Mortal Kombat came out,
Yeah. Yeah, I
right?
love that growing
I
up.
know.
Yeah.
Totally telling on how old I am, right? Mortal Kombat. I
Yeah, I
played it
love
when it
it.
was on Sega.
Yeah, same. I love it.
So, but yeah, so okay, so you're a podcaster, love that, and you get to talk to all these really cool people that bring different perspectives to wellness, and that's mind, body, and spirit. You also mentioned, and then now the book, Good Grief. So thank you for being on for that. So Jessica's will drop next week, and then you'll be right after Jessica, and then we also had Irina, and Irina was great. So Jessica is so friggin' cool. I was like, we should be best friends. She's so
Yeah,
cool.
it's awesome. I got the privilege to meet a bunch of the authors when we did our book launch here in Calgary, and I mean, just the vibes were just positive across the whole room, and everybody was. I love everybody has a story.
Yep.
And so I love this idea of a book where we can come together and share our stories under kind of a common umbrella. But when you do read the book, Good Grief, like, everybody's stories are so unique, right? And it just goes to show that something like wellness or something like grief, there's a lot of different layers to it. There's a lot of different aspects to it. And so how cool that people can come together and share all these unique stories.
Agreed. So tell me about your story.
Yeah, thank you. So my story is kind of rooted in my journey through identity and through the grief of kind of lost identity, in terms of kind of losing yourself through roles and expectations in life. I became a father at the age of 20, um, and quickly jumped into marriage and that life, because of the expectations that were out there for us from society, from family, and from ourselves, to jump into that. And through that process, there was a lot of things that, ups and downs, like everybody has. But it was really just, when you're 20 years old, you don't even know who you are yet. Like, you haven't had a chance to really figure that out. You might think, we're constantly evolving through life. And the story in Good Grief that I wrote about was my journey through that marriage, and through that marriage eventually ending and having three beautiful kids. And just this idea of, like, if this isn't it, this thing that I was building so far, working so hard to build towards, if this isn't it, then, like, what am I good for here? What's my purpose? Who am I if I'm not the husband, if I'm not the family man that I thought I was going to be? And it was, yeah, my journey through kind of losing myself and discovering myself again.
You know what? I'm going to tell you something interesting. I love that I got to, like, I mean, I remember us talking on text and you were like, "Did you read the book?" And I was like, "I didn't." I'm kind of like, I kind of want to just hear it for the first time. And I'm glad I did it this way. And I'm going to tell you why. So I have been at a couple of conferences, sitting down talking to guys. Now, here's the thing. I seem to be that person that everybody likes to tell things to.
Yeah.
And your situation is exactly what one of the guys sat with me. He's just in the midst of getting a divorce, married younger. He's probably like his late 30s. Um, in the midst of getting a divorce, been with her for like 14 years, seems to be okay, but he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know who he is outside of being the father, the husband. So when people are like, so he has a girlfriend now, and when people talk to him, he almost has to pause because he's so used to saying my wife. And now he's like,
Mm.
so, and I find that really fascinating. And being on the other side as a female, I would have never thought that would be a thing for you guys. Do you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's just like, oh, well, they're just them. Like, it's like every woman in their brain thinks that men are just like inherently selfish.
Yeah.
It sounds like shit, but it's true.
Yeah.
Most people are just like, oh, well, it doesn't bother him. He'll just go do whatever he wants. But in deep down inside, it's like, no, I put all of my love and effort into this relationship, into these children, into this person. And now it has come to an end for whatever reason. And who am I? If I'm not this person's spouse, if I'm not, working extra hard to make sure that this happens or that happens, or, like my kids need this or she needs that, or we want to go on a trip or whatever, right? So it's true. It's rediscovering your identity as yourself, being by yourself. And it's a very rewarding journey because as a single mom, I too had to kind of go through that to remember who I was because I had formulated myself. I made so many concessions that they ended up being sacrifices
Mm.
of me as a person. And I lost parts of me and became other parts I didn't like. So when that mirror shatters in front of you and you have to pick up the pieces, the cool thing is you get to pick up the ones you want and leave the others behind and
Yeah.
and be a better version of you. And like I always tell people when they say that to me, I'm like, well, the most beautiful pottery in the world is the one by the Japanese where it's infused with gold because it's been broken.
Yeah.
Right?
Kintsugi, I think it's called.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's beautifully said.
oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, I think your story is going to hit a lot of people, and it's so perfect. I like doing stories like this because right now, because June is Men's Mental Health Month, and I said
Yeah.
on my last podcast, I said I'm going to make sure I mention it while I'm going through June because I didn't know that, and actually, my producer, who is my voice of God, was the one who brought it to my attention. I didn't even know that. In all the years, I mean, I know about Mental Health Month, but I didn't realize that there was a men's mental health month. And of course, it's like in the shadow of Pride, Juneteenth, Indigenous People Day. And then there's Father's Day. And I'm like, men's mental health month is in June and there's Father's Day. Like, how fitting is that? How did nobody know this? Or am
I,
I
I,
like,
I literally, I just saw a comedian
yeah,
the other day, and they were talking about all the holidays, and they
yeah,
said, the top two celebrated holidays that's been researched is Christmas is first, Mother's Day second.
yeah.
So we celebrate Jesus first, and then Mom second. And where do you think Father's Day is on that list? Well, it's like number 20,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like Columbus Day is ahead of Father's Day in terms of being celebrated. So it's like, and I think a lot of men would probably tell you that, like, I could care less about Father's Day. Like, I don't need to get a gift and that type of thing. It's one of those things where the appreciation, like everybody, it wants to be felt year round. Um, but yeah, June is kind of Men's Mental Health Month. It does kind of fly under the radar. so often. And there's some, some really interesting things that you kind of touched on in terms of even talking about that gentleman who shared with you that he was going through a divorce and that type of thing. Because, I do think that men have there's something just like deep inside of us that's been passed on, through generations and time, that we want to be that person. We want to be that provider, that we want to take on those roles. It's a very heavy part of us. It's very much just built in and wired into us. And when you have an expectation of what that is going to look like, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where it can be really challenging, when that expectation isn't met, or when the situation changes and you're left lost. Like, I thought this is who I was. I thought this is what I was supposed to do. This was my purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
And when that purpose is taken away from you, it can be a really scary place for a man.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like,
absolutely.
where's your worth? Right. Yeah.
Agreed. And I think that that's a big thing that people fail to realize. And so me being someone who works in a very male dominating industry, I have a lot more allies than I do enemies. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's, and so when people are like, "Oh, Lisa, what's it like being a woman in trades?" You know what? Like 10 years ago it sucked. But I've managed to be able to speak their language and provide the respect that they're looking for in order for them to issue it back. And so what I found is that men seek purpose in everything they do. They don't just do it to do it. If that's the case, they're gaming. And even then, like, there's purpose in gaming. So, do you know what I mean? So, I find that what happens is that I think every male on some level wants to be, actually needs to be needed. On some level, they need to be needed, whether it's by their kids, whether it's by their neighbor, whether it's by their woman, whether it's by their partner, whatever the case, they need to be needed on some level. And when you find people in the world that come together and they, you find a partner and they don't need you, you're almost kind of like outsourcing it. Like, who needs me? My work needs me. Or like I have a hobby where somebody's like, you need somebody to kind of depend on you, because it brings some sort of purpose and fulfillment. And I think that is very deeply rooted in the veins of all men on some level. And when they can't do that, they feel massive defeat. They have resentment towards themselves. They don't think they're good enough. Depression sets in, and they're like, why am I here? I don't offer anything. I'm not good. And and I've had some guy friends that have come to me and talked to me like that. And I'm just looking at them and I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you're great. And they're like, yeah, but nobody needs me. And I'm like, that's a great place to be. I don't want people to need me. Leave me the hell alone. But then I
Yeah.
also say, and I've said this to my significant others, I said to him, some men need to be needed. I don't need you. I want you. That is a better place to be. It means that I don't have an expectation of you to uphold, that you could let me down so badly that it would leave you feeling like you failed. I want you in my life because you provide X, Y, and Z, which is something that if there was a problem, we can have a conversation. It's easily solved. It's not financial, right? So, and that's something that I always feel like, now that I've done, like you, I've, been there, done that, burn the t-shirt with marriage. I kind of feel like I would never get married again. And that's my choice. I don't knock people that do it until you get to like your third marriage. I'm like, maybe settle down. Maybe it's not for you. I don't know, but that's kind of my opinion on it. But, but, I mean, I think that men's mental health is such a triggering thing for people, because women feel, there's so many women in the world that feel that there's so much oppression by men that they're like, well, what could they possibly be upset about? And I've had to stop women. Like, I've had women on my podcast that are like, oh, well, as a woman in trades, I need to make sure that I go with somebody with me because I can't trust anybody. And as a female, I'm like, men have the same problem. Do you know how many times I've sent a man into a residence and the woman is like sexually aggressive towards him, and I've had to go in because he has more of a problem than she does. She has the upper hand immediately, even though she's the aggressor. So
Mm-hmm.
I've had to go in and rescue him. And she's like, oh, really? And I'm like, oh, yeah. I've had to go in
Yeah.
and rescue a lot of my guys, because if they reject her and all of a sudden an email flies out and she can say whatever she wants, they're going to go on her side immediately. As there is no until proven guilty. He's guilty. He's got to prove his innocence.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's always, so I always explain to people, there's a double-edged sword everywhere. It's always like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, and so my other half and I was bug each other about double standards. There's no double standards. But then there are things where he's like, well, that's different. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not.
Yeah.
But there is. We all have double
Yeah.
standards.
I think we're living through a really interesting time with this kind of masculine feminine, because so much of the language around it becomes her versus him or
Yeah.
men versus women. And I think that where the real problem lies is in the understanding. Like, we have to be willing to try to understand each other and where we've been and where we're going. Even the language around like needing versus like men feeling like they're needed versus wanted.
Mm-hmm.
It's a challenging thing for men right now in the world, where like a lot of women can take care of themselves,
Yeah.
right? Like, especially through divorce. Like, this is probably one of the number one reasons why people are getting divorced right now, is because like women are like, I can work for myself now. Like, I can provide for myself. I don't need a man in my life.
Mm-hmm.
How does that make a man feel? Right? It's like, uh, you want me, right? But you don't need me. That's a challenging thing to hear as a man. That's a
Mm-hmm.
challenging thing to accept as a man, that now it's just down to desire, right? And I can tell you from working with even, young boys, grade 4 or 5, as young as like 8 years old, they're already feeling the pressure of even not being wanted, or the fear of going and talking to a girl for the first time, and the pressure that the man is supposed to make the first move. But if you approach a girl and then they don't receive it in the way that it's intended, 8-year-old boys are telling me they're scared that girls are going to feel like they're being inappropriate by telling them that they like them, or that they're, if they don't reciprocate it, they're going to tell their friends, and what that's going to do to their ego and to their, it's a scary thing, and it starts from a really young age. And so I think it's a really important conversation
Mm-hmm.
that men and women need to have together to try and have a better understanding.
I agree. I agree with you. And I'm gonna tell you, I have a son, as you know, and so I said, my son is actually, I'm not gonna lie, like, I mean, I'm being being a single mom. His dad's in his life. His dad runs his own business. His dad is not a manly man by any stretch. His dad's, kind of like, I mean, I don't know how to describe his father, if I'm being super honest with you, but I probably am more manly than he is. That sounds horrible, but it's true.
Yeah, I mean, the balance of masculine feminine energy, it's constantly up and down,
Ebbs and
right? and
flows, ebbs
and
and flows.
yeah.
But I'm very much a boy mom when it comes to my son. I'm very much a boy mom, and I'm silly and goofy. And I always tell my son, like, I remember since he's babe, I would say, you only need one. This is horrible. You only need one woman in your life. That's your mama. That's it. You don't need anybody else. And I would tell him all the time, you're so handsome. All the girls are going to want to talk to you. You don't talk to no girls. You only need your mama. So so he's 12 now, and he's not, I think he's kind of fascinated by the girls, but not really. He's more sports minded, very
Mhm.
athletic. He wants to do like football, football, football. Football is life. I eat, breathe, sleep football. Or he's out in the back playing basketball. Or he just wants to hang out with the guys. And he's like, Mom, someone called me gay. And I said, can I tell you a secret, kid? And he's like, what? I'm like, boys between the ages of 7 and 14 act super gay. It's just a thing. And he's like, so what does that mean? I'm like, it just means that you do and say things that kind of come across as gay. But I'm like,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, if whether or not you're homosexual is really not a problem, regardless. And I said, but you will know based on what you find desirable. If you want to kiss a boy, then you know that you're gay. If you want to kiss a girl, then probably not. And if you want to kiss both, you're greedy. So just saying, but and so he would just laugh. But I've always been a really open mom with him. And so him and I, we have a great relationship, but we do fight. My producer hears us fight. We are the same character. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, when they made him, that was the taste of your own medicine. That's what that happened
I've
there.
got one of those. Yeah.
And you're like, why? And like it's like a conflicting moment where you're proud and angry all at the same time. You
Hmm.
know? Like don't use my words against me.
Yeah,
We're not
but
there.
I think it's really important too. It's like one of the things I love about sport, as you mentioned, like he wants to be involved in the sports. He wants to be around that atmosphere, and I
Yeah.
think that's another thing that is really missing for men in the world right now is that community aspect, right?
100%.
And I think it's the awareness is rising with it that men need their tribes, that men need their communities, because like when we talk about those things, like when that role, like a divorce, and that being the father or being the husband, even in a divorce where you don't get to see your kids as much, maybe it's 50% of the time if you're lucky, um, but like those situations, you're grieving this part of your identity, this part of your manhood, and to have communities with other men who you can talk to and potentially relate to about some of those things, where they go, yeah, I struggled with that too.
Hmm.
It There's something really powerful in knowing, like, I'm not fucked up. Like, I'm not alone here. This isn't a me problem. Like,
Yeah.
it's a me problem. I need to take responsibility for it. But in a weird way, it feels good to know other people have struggled too.
Right. But here's my question to you as a female, because this is something that I've had said to me by a lot of guys. And when I
Yep.
say a lot, I mean more than 10. We don't trust anyone. With social media nowadays, we don't know who we can tell what to, what will end up on the internet, what won't, what will be weaponized against us. We don't trust anyone to talk to, because anytime we have given some of our vulnerable selves to somebody, they have weaponized it against us. So we just don't talk anymore. And suppression has been a huge thing in men since I can remember. My dad was like that. My grandpa was like that. My brother's like that. My brother's not as bad anymore. Still does that shit. But not, I mean, he's got a very supportive wife. So I always tell my brother, I'm like, don't do that shit. So he's getting better. But that's also part of the boy code that all of us were raised in, right? Don't cry. Don't be a wimp. Do this, do that. You have to be a man. You're the man of the house. Like I've even said that to my son. I'm like, I'll say to him, like, oh, you're the little man of the house. And he'll be like, what does that mean? And I'll be like, nothing. You're the only boy. I'm like, let's not pretend mom's the man of the house. And he starts laughing and he's like, but I mean, it's still something that's ingrained in all of us to even say, us like Gen Xers and millennials, and it's something we still do. We still there's that's so ingrained, the boy code,
Hmm.
right? You can't cry at this. You can't, like, even I've even had people tell me that I'm raising my son to be a namby pamby, and I'm like, great, don't care. I'm like, so explain to me what that means. That he's kind, that he's courteous, that he's considerate, that he takes accountability, that he has a big heart, that he likes to hug and he's affectionate, that he's willing to go through the emotions and understand them. So emotional intelligence is not acceptable. I'm like, I
Yeah.
need my son to have emotional intelligence. I need him to be balanced. I need him to say, I'm angry today and this is why. I need his communication skills to be good for him,
Yeah.
right? So,
Emotional intelligence is step one, I think,
mhm.
right? And okay, just to go back a little bit. So when we're being raised as boys, and we have this, we like I said, we already have this thing ingrained in us even before the language begins, I think, of don't cry, man up, you got to step up, push through it, right? I went through this in martial arts too. Like although there's a lot of positive that come from, like, the discipline, the grit, the resilience,
Mhm.
there are things that I had to unlearn through
Yeah.
that process as well, of like, no, you get up and fight, like that hero mentality. I don't care if
Yeah.
you're hurt, fight, finish the fight. When you win, it'll even more glorious,
Yeah.
right? And like things like that you learn to navigate it. And I think that's where the emotional intelligence comes in. It's learning to, like you said, be okay having the emotions, be okay feeling them, and then start to understand them on a deeper level, right? I'm angry. Okay. That's okay to be angry. Okay. Where's that coming from? the emotion wheel that most people have seen. It's like under anger there, maybe there's sadness, maybe there's hurt, maybe there's betrayal, maybe there's vulnerability, like all these different things that
Mhm.
could be there. So that emotional intelligence piece is really important so that we can actually understand what we're feeling. And then emotional control and emotional regulation becomes so important too. And I think that's where trust of self and trust with other people really starts to form. At least that's been
Mhm.
my experience. Is it's great to recognize our emotions. It's great to recognize that I'm angry or that I'm hurt. But if I don't have accountability for my actions with those emotions, then what good is that?
Mhm.
Right? And there's an expression, um, I think it's like your trauma explains your behavior, but it doesn't excuse it. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that's always really stuck with me is it doesn't matter how other people treat me. It's going to evoke emotions. I can then understand my emotions, get in touch with my emotions. I'm the one as the man, and I think that's really what it means to me, um, to be a man on a deeper level, is recognizing that I'm responsible for all of it.
Mhm.
It's not all my fault. Not everything's my fault, but I'm damn well responsible for what do I do with it now. And I think that's a really important piece.
Agreed. Because I say that to my kids when they talk to me about their dad, and I say, and they'll say, and they're so funny, "Dad's the way he is because of his mother," and I'm like, "Dad is an adult. It is his responsibility to change that. It is, I'm like, there may be outside factors that cause different behavioral displays of, being angry or whatever. Well, but you got to change those triggers. You got to rewrite it. Cause I mean, like, they all like, there's that ongoing joke where it's like, do you know why your mother can push all your buttons? Cause she installed them. And it's like,
Mhm.
it's true.
So true. It's so true. Right. And that awareness is step one. It's so important.
Right.
Right. And then, but
And
what do you do with it? Right. You
well,
got to do the work. You got to
yeah.
put the effort in so that even as parents now, like us sitting here, we got our shit that we still got to deal with. Like I'm continually trying to do the work. And a big part of that is because I don't want my kids to have to go through those same things. I don't want to pass down some of these behaviors, some of these thought patterns, and that type of thing that I have. And so again, as a man, I'm taking responsibility for my own shit and trying to work through it as best as I can for myself and for them.
So, I heard a saying, it said, and it like hit me so hard. It's like the parent you are is the parent you needed when you were a kid. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
I've heard
oh.
that. Yeah, be the parent you always needed, right? Yeah,
Well, but then here's the thing. You always end up having kids that don't need your parenting style. They don't need what you needed. And you're like, oh, it's like a
yeah.
perpetual cycle.
Yeah, but see, this is what I love about relationships,
Yeah.
right? And this I kind of write about this in my chapter in the book as well, as all the shit that we went through in our marriage, regardless of what we went through and the struggles and the highs and the lows,
Mhm.
the whole time, what we don't realize is that we're learning about ourselves. Like every relationship is a mirror,
Mhm.
whether it's a significant other, whether it's your best friend, whether it's your kids or a coworker. Every interaction that we have with those people is an opportunity. Again, we have
Mhm.
to take responsibility for it. It's an opportunity for us to learn more about who we are. Why did I react that way? Why, when they said that, did it hurt so bad? Right? All those things, it's so much more about us than it is about anybody else. But the relationships that we have in our life give us those opportunities to learn, give us those opportunities to get into that understanding and get into being able to say, okay, now that I understand that I feel this way when somebody does this, how can I work on it myself, regardless of what I can't control?
Yeah, it's true. But I mean, I I think my biggest issue with the whole boy code and no boy code and this and that is, so here's the thing. As a woman who works in the industry and who's heterosexual, I'll tell you right now, I I still want the machismo man, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the knuckle dragger, the the one that's going to build my house and grunt and probably not talk to me a whole bunch. But then at the same time, I want the guy that's really intellectual and has really cool things to say and is really smart. And then I also want the guy that's really sensitive and wants to hug me and tell me everything's okay and make me feel like a princess. And then I also want the guy who's not going to, cry more than me. So I'm like, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So it's very
I do know what you
confusing.
mean.
Yeah. So it's very confusing because as a woman, I want my son to be this strong man that respects people, not just women, people, is intelligent, is well spoken, is able to decipher the different emotions and why they're bugging. He's able to take a time out and go, you know what, I'm really pissed off because what that person said irritated me because I don't like it because I have a friend that suffers from that and that really pissed me off. I don't have a tolerance for it. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So now you know so how do you fix that? Well, then I just don't listen to them or I stay away from them for the rest of the night because I really don't care what they have to say. Or go change their mind.
Yeah.
A lot of people that have ignorance going on, because they say ignorance is bliss. So a lot of people who have ignorance going on, it's because they don't know. Sometimes, like even I will say that there are a lot of times where I have an ignorant perspective of something and someone will come and talk to me about it. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
like my friend Greg does that on the daily. Like he's such an intelligent man. And he will we'll just be having a conversation. And I'll be like, I don't like this, blah, 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 squawk it off. And he'll be like, well, hang on, hold on. And then he'll give me a rundown of different perspectives. He'll play devil's advocate with me. And I'm like, oh, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Has he completely changed my mind? No. But has he changed my perspective? Yes. Has he created some more tolerance around it? Probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and see, like that's the thing with the until we're willing to try to see things from another perspective, or at least understand things from another perspective,
Mm-hmm.
we avoid the problem altogether,
Yep.
right? And so, for example, what you're just saying, how confusing it is as a woman to be like, but I want this man, but I also want this type of man, and I also want this type of man. Now put yourself in the perspective of being the man who wants to be desired, who's trying to attract women, who's trying to build a sustainable relationship with somebody. And they're like, you don't even know what you want, which type of man you want me to be. So how am I supposed to know which type of man I'm supposed to show up as for you? Right. And so it's like, that's where I think there's more understanding that needs to be had in conversations like this, which I'm absolutely loving. So
Well, that's good because I mean, but it's honest, right? We got to cut through the bullshit every now and then and just
I agree.
be honest. And I said, there's times where my significant other will come in, very intelligent man, very well spoken. He has great thoughts. It's not like he's just kind of every once in a while I'll bug him when there's like the different reels that come up, and I'll be like, have you ever had a dream where you had a dream and you had a dream and you had a dream? And he's like, wow. Because that's how they describe men, like their brains, and then like the other
Mhm.
ones, like Eminem singing Godzilla is a woman's brain, and I'm like, it's accurate. So, and then there's times where he'll come in and I'll be like, "Duh, George, I George." He's like, wow. He's like, you're so rude.
Yeah.
But I just tease him, like, is he stupid? Not at all. He's a very intelligent man. But
Mhm.
it's like he's one of those guys that he just this is what I say to him. It's a bad joke. He excels at everything he puts his mind to.
Yeah.
I say it's his ADHD. I'm like, your ADHD got in the way and you had to get good at everything you went to learn. Like, he's the guy that if he has to spray a ceiling, he's on YouTube watching every single, and like watching like 3 hours of YouTube of how to spray a ceiling, popcorn ceiling, knockdown, whatever. And then the next day he comes out and he bangs it out in like 3 hours. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that ceiling's a 6 hour ceiling. That's good. And it is. There's
Yeah.
no flaws, and if there is, he's already looking for them. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he's one of those guys that always has to perfect everything he does. And so whenever there's a flaw, I kind of have to point it out.
Yeah.
I'm that asshole. And I'm just like, oh, look right there. And he's like,
Yeah.
where? He gets really upset with me. And he's like, go stand outside for a minute.
Yeah.
Stress me out.
It's
But
tough,
you're
man.
right.
It's like, yeah. I'd love to go back though, because I'd love to hear your perspective on where you think that balance is in terms of, because I do think that I think men feel the same way sometimes too, where they're like, I want a woman who's this, but I also want a woman who's this. Like, I want a woman who can provide for herself and that kind of takes that that pressure off of me, but I also want to like feel like they need me. Like those types of, I think both sides have those
Okay.
kind of debates going on inside their
Okay.
head. Focusing in on the man, because that's kind of where this conversation has been. I'm curious from your perspective, where do you think the balance is in terms of like how is a man supposed to show up?
I don't think there is a balance. I don't think there is a balance between, I'm going to be a straight shooter on this one. I think between social media, social norms, and society and Hollywood, they have destroyed it for men and
Mm-hmm.
women to
I
show
agree.
up authentically for each other.
I agree.
I think that if you are someone who wants to be in love with someone, genuinely want a connection, there has to be concessions somewhere. I'm not saying sacrifice. You want a tall guy with blue eyes and brown hair? Great, go find him. Guess what? He might be a narcissist, he might be poor, he might be this. Like you have to find where you're willing to make the concessions. Same with a man. Some guys might say, you know what? I want a woman who can, she's a boss babe. She makes her own money. She's self-sufficient and she doesn't want kids. Good chance you're going to find her. Good chance she's going to be a workaholic. Can you live with that?
Mm-hmm.
Can you live with her not coming home and cooking and cleaning? Where are the concessions? Because what you're looking for has to have, it has to make sense for you. There's no one person that's going to fit all that. I
Yeah.
know my significant other doesn't fit all the things, but he fits most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like when we sit down and we all have our little checklist of what we're looking for in a person. Right. And the first thing that most people will come back with, well, is appearance, because we're looking for someone that looks a certain way.
It's
Some girls
important.
like rugged guys. Some girls like clean cut guys. Some girls like the guys that, look like they might kill you. I don't know. The ones, what's really funny? The guys that look like they're going to kill me are the ones that are like really clean cut, and they have that weird smile, but
Yeah.
they look like honestly, like every lawyer I run into, I'm like, he's going to kill me. Like, where's the biker?
Yeah.
That guy's got a family at home. He'll kill people.
Yeah. See, there's something there. You got to figure out why that trigger is there.
Well, but you know what though? But that's what I've seen. So growing up
Yeah.
from the 80s, 90s, and onward, the people that are kidnapping and killing and the ones that are like the serial killers are the clean cut. Oh, he was
Mm-hmm.
such a great guy. He was a pillar of the community. Nobody knew. Meanwhile, he's a serial killer, or he's killed his whole family, or he's been killing people for years. And you would never know. So that's where I'm like, listen, the guy in the leather with the scraggly beard is who I'm running to and being like, hey,
Yeah.
bud, there's a really clean cut guy following me. I'm a little nervous. Go get his ass.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
No,
less
I'm.
scared
Yeah.
of those guys. I'm less
I'm
like the
glad.
biker.
I'm glad. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's
I'm
okay.
glad that you said there's no balance, because I 100% agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you said a word that I think is just so important with this conversation, which is authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've been confused at like what does it even mean to show up as authentically in a relationship. And again, I think it comes back to yourself, right? When bringing it back to kind of the chapter that I wrote in Good Grief, like one of the things I wrote about was the fact that we were both lost going through this marriage. Like we had both kind of lost connection with ourselves. And it was only until I was forced to stop fighting for all these things that I thought I was supposed to be doing
Mm-hmm.
that I was finally able to like look back in at myself and say, what do I want to fight for? Like
Mm-hmm.
what's important to me? And that doesn't have to be a selfish thing to be like, nope, I have my checklist and like I will not settle for anything less than this. That doesn't have to be how it is. And I also don't think it has to be a selfish thing, but it's more just about how do I want to show up in a relationship and what's important for me to kind of receive in return. And that takes trial and error sometimes as well, and conversation, like honest conversations with
Mm-hmm.
people.
So I'm going to tell you something that I tell everybody, and I do it. It's really bad. Like, you know how like you give secrets for like as men and women, like because I speak Venusian and you speak Martian. So sometimes
Yeah.
I'll like grab the Martians and teach them how to speak Venusian.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I say to guys is when they're telling me, and you know what, and I know you're going to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Women are really bad at campaigning. They will show you one side of themselves because they want that ring. They want the ring. And then all of a sudden they get the ring and shit goes sideways. And he's like, who are you? Who did I marry? And sometimes it happens a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, right away. But the person all of a sudden starts to show who they really are, because now they don't have to be the person that's, trying to catch a man or catch a husband. And I see it all the time. And so I'll talk to guys and they'll be like, oh, she does this and she does that and she does this. And I'm like, oh, did she do it before you? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, the way you can tell a lot about a person is how they talk about the things they did prior to you. So if she was like, oh, I took up cooking and cleaning after whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, it seems to be working really well for me. But then she goes and cleans your house like a superstar. I'd pay attention to those things. Do you know what I mean? Like, you got to pay attention to how people are showing. And that goes for like the opposite sex too. If a man says he can build a whole house and all of a sudden he's doing all these things for you, and then, all of a sudden you get married and everything stops, and everyone's like, well, then people get busy and people get this. And I'm like, but it shouldn't stop. Date night shouldn't stop. Doing things around the house shouldn't stop. Yes, life changes, especially when kids come in. And this is something I tell everybody. Kids don't make things easier. They make them harder. If your relationship is already stressed before children, get a puppy, because there's a good chance someone's taking the puppy and someone's not.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's really what, because
Yeah.
everyone's like, oh, we want a kid, so let's get a dog. I'm like, that's a great idea, because you're going to find out really quick whether or not you should have children. Because if you
Yeah.
both can't take care of a screaming puppy in the middle of the night that shits all over your floor, you're probably not going to be able to do a baby. Just saying.
Yeah.
Right?
I
So,
agree with you. I agree
yeah.
with you. I don't think it's as black and white as that seems,
Yeah.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that there has to be a willingness to talk about those things, to call each other out on those things, but in a way that it's a tricky thing to navigate in relationships, with calling each other out on stuff as well. Like, it has to be approached in a way that, again, that's another thing that you have to have a conversation about. Like, I didn't like the way that you called me out about this, and I'd like to have a better conversation of, like, find a better way that we can do this. But I
Yep.
do think that there can be so many things that come up in terms of how somebody maybe changes in a relationship, and it's not always necessarily the other person's fault either, right? You can be in that early stage of a relationship where you're so in love and everything seems easy, and then sometimes, both of us, like you said, you've been through a divorce as well, correct? Yeah. So, like, we've both been through that. There's some things that could come up that might be unexpected for you, that you're like, whoa, I didn't see this coming. Like, I was like so in love, and all of a sudden all these fears, all these anxieties, all these other things start popping up. Might have nothing to do, it might have a little bit to do with the other person, but it probably has a lot more to do with what that person is going through. And I think people are so quick to just be like, oh, they're not showing up for me the way that I want them to anymore. This is over. Or, this isn't what I was looking for. It's like, if you really love somebody, if you really want this to work, I think there's space to, again, try and create more understanding around that. Hey, I noticed you're not showing up this way anymore. What's going on? Right? Can we talk about this? Is there time to work through this? And that then comes back on the person, the individual, to take responsibility for that.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not able to, then that might be the fate. But yeah,
So what I'm hearing a lot of lately, because we got to look at both sides of the pendulum here, right?
100%.
So we've got, on one side of the pendulum, we've got really awful human beings, okay? Ones where men are terrified to leave the woman they're with because they are 100% are going to use those children as leverage. They are going to try to bleed them dry. They're going to do everything in the book to lie, cheat, steal this man's livelihood and his children away from him, when all he wants is just an easy break. You go your way, I'll go my way. I'll make sure you're okay. I'll make sure the kids are okay. But no, it's not enough. She wants more, 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 more. Then you got the guy who's has the woman walking on eggshells. She doesn't know whether she can say anything. He might hit her. He might financially be abusing her. He might emotionally abuse her. She's scared to leave with the kids. She doesn't have any access to money or to the amount of money she would need to walk away. So there's these horrible people on one side of the pendulum. On the other side of the pendulum, you've got people who are, they're free to do whatever they want and they're easygoing. But these people don't normally meet each other. Okay. The people that like, it's very few and far between where you have someone who's easygoing and they're self sufficient and they're kind of lackadaisical about a lot of things when it comes to emotions and whatnot. So, what I mean by that is it's like, oh, I want to go get popcorn. Yeah, sounds great. Let's go get popcorn. Oh, I want to go to the movies. Yeah, what movie you want to go see? I want to go see this movie. Sounds great. Like just super easygoing. And that's on the kind of the other side of the spectrum. So when there's a breakup, they're like, oh, yeah, take half. No problem. I got it. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So you've got these two opposite ends of the spectrum, and they always find each other in a relationship. So when the relationship's coming, you've got the person that's like, oh, I don't think it's working out. Let's try and let's go to therapy. Then you've got this person who's like, I don't need therapy. Doesn't matter whether they're male or female. So this is where I want to make sure I'm very clear with you. It doesn't matter at this point whether it's male or female because you find them in both sides. So
Correct.
it's like, I don't want to go to therapy. I don't need therapy. Well, and sometimes it's just, excuse me, the other person saying, I don't know how to talk to you without you turning into a fucking psychopath. So I need a third party in the room. But all they hear is that maybe they have a problem, right?
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tricky dynamic, right? And
excuse me. Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those things. It's part of the process of discovering, right?
But I also think that men and women, there's too much there's too much gluttony in the world and greed. Like even though women are making money and they want to be more self-sufficient, like I hate when people talk to me about dating sites. I hate it. I'll never go on it. I went on dating sites when I first like got separated from my ex. So I was married before I had children with my ex now, but I got married and divorced, and then I met my children's father. We
Gotcha.
never married. I was like, yeah, marriage is in the lottery. We never got married, but we had kids. So, but I'll tell you, I went online dating and I was very short lived. I remember I would hand the phone to my guy friends 90% of the time, and they had more fun on my dating site than like under my profile. They're like, oh my God, these guys are psycho. You got like 300 messages. I'm like, fix it. Jesus, take the wheel.
It's two different worlds for men
Yeah.
and women on those things too. Like,
Right. So, and so I went into the dating world, but then here's the thing. So then I remember talking to men that were in the dating world, nice looking guys that were in the dating world on the apps, and the shit they would tell me. Oh, well, this girl will do this and this girl will do that and that girl will do this. And I'm like, you guys are talking about a menu for sex that some of these women are willing to do. And a lot of us women aren't.
mm-hmm.
Right. So now the bar has been raised like to these aspects where women feel inadequate. I'm never going to find a man because, Chelsea down the street who's offering Pornhub has now just taken me out of the race because I'm not that person. I'm more reserved. And
Mm-hmm.
women feel that because they look at men as a very sexual being. So when a woman is looking at a man, she's terrified. Is this guy going to try and come at me? Is he going to ask me to do weird things? Like, I don't do any of that. And am I going to lose out because I won't do that? So then women feel pressured to also do some of the things that they would normally never do, nor do they want to. And that's another aspect that a lot of people have to understand. That's where the bear in the woods came up, right? Because now it's like there's this menu for all these things to do, and whether or not you're willing to provide it, some women are. So if they are, then you are. So then we're just going to take it from you, and that's how women get scared. And so I have to remind them, it's not all men. There are a lot of men that don't want that at all.
Yeah. I was going to say too. I think also a lot of what you're saying. I've been on the apps. I think men feel the same way a lot of the times too, where they're like, "How am I ever going to meet somebody in this pool?" Right? Because it's become so easy with the swiping. It's like you just have options. If one relationship doesn't work, I got another option, right? But also, I think these apps have become just another platform, like any social media platform, where you've created an expectation of like, this is how I'm supposed to show up in order to like just even get the first date. Like the statistics around the amount of times you need to match somebody just to get a date for men, I think is like 0.001 for like in terms of actual matches to dates. So like it's a really defeating process, I think, for men and women, because it's this platform that is telling you this is how you should show up. Like the profiles that I remember seeing with, some of my guy friends, and even profiles that I was seeing, it's like 90% of the women are like, make me laugh. It's like, I remember joking with a friend, like, what are we, like clowns? Like, they just make me laugh kind of thing. But it's like, there's all these things. So now you're playing the game,
Mm-hmm.
right? And again, I think it just comes back to, I'm a firm believer, even with social media, people say social media is negative. Social media is such a negative place to be.
Can be.
But is it, like, is it a negative place, or are you just focusing on negative content, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's Gary Vaynerchuk famously said it, but it's like social media isn't inherently negative. It exposes you,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the same way we approach relationships. Like, why is that post triggering for you? That
Yeah.
should tell you more about you than about social media. So
Yep.
when we're looking at these dating sites, when we're looking at approaching relationships, again, I think it all needs to come back to an authentic place for yourself.
Yeah.
Why does it bother me that that person didn't respond to me? Why does it bother me that some of these women are um, putting themselves out there in this way and I'm not willing to? Like, why does that bother me? When you ask yourself that question and you can start to get honest about why the app or the platform is making you feel the way that it's making you feel, then I think it's like it almost narrows it down a bit where you're like, yeah, let them do what they're gonna do, and trust the process almost in a way is how
I
I
like
look
that.
at
Yeah.
it.
No, I love what you said. Is it's true. You got to get real with you.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of times where I will get triggered by something online or whatever, and then I'll say to myself, "Why is this making me mad?"
Yep. Yep.
And a lot of times, I use the, "Well, if you don't like it, just keep going, just keep scrolling.
Yeah.
It's a
Well, and
wonderful thing. You
yeah,
just keep going. Like you don't."
and change the like play with your algorithms too.
Yeah,
This is something I've been doing, and I'm currently right now doing like a social media hiatus a little bit. Um,
I heard you did
because I'm,
too.
I'm because I'm trying to work through some stuff in my mind, and I'm like, I don't want the influence of the videos and stuff like that continually pop up, because it's a rabbit hole. You watch one video of like funny puppies falling off of things,
Oh God.
right? You watch one full video of that, the next 10 videos, what is it, right? So it's really easy to go down that rabbit hole when you watch one video that's like, yeah, you should, like, puts you like, kind of confirms your victimhood in the situation or
Right.
something, and then 10 more videos come, like, guess what, now your mind's like, yeah, yeah, that's right, I am the victim here, I was right, right? It's like, man, focus on you.
Yeah.
It's a rabbit hole that can be really tough to get out of.
Not gonna lie, I do like some rabbit holes, but I absolutely agree with your statement. The whole
Yeah.
algorithm, and it's almost kind of sick to me on how quickly, like, I will have liked, some women will come on and say something that resonates with me because I've been through it. But the
Hmm.
way she says it is so funny, right? And it'll be about a narcissistic abuse. But she makes a joke and she's funny. And I'm like, girl, amen. And I'll, you know what I mean? And I'll like hit the like, and I'll even post like the little prayer hands that are up, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And then all of a sudden, my whole algorithm after that is like narcissistic abuse, men doing this. And I'm like, whoa, I just thought what she said was funny.
Hmm.
I totally understood it. But we're like, so then I have to try and change my algorithm. So then I'm like, let's look at otters or puppies or kittens or something until I can figure something else I want to look at.
Yeah.
Or all of the stuff that was going on with the G7, that was like flooding my system because I was like, I saw one thing and I was like, oh yeah, the G7. And I'm like, But then there, of course, us Canadians, we can be pretty savage. So because because the president of the US was coming in and like the comments. So of course I liked because it had like the Air Force One flying in. And then so then I liked it. And then I read the comments and I was just like, I put a comment. I do this every once in a while where I'm like just the eyes and the popcorn and Coke. That's it. That's all I put in the comments. Like just here for the comments. And I just scroll through them.
Yep.
And I'm like, these are gold. Some of these are just gold.
Yeah.
Like, is
But
he
it's
lost?
it's
Is he
it's
lost?
dangerous, man. Like, I intentionally avoid the news. I'm like, if I need to know it, I'll hear about it. But like,
Mhm.
but that's just because me personally, like, I find myself affected by
Yeah.
like negative content and stuff like that, and like, I don't need to be more scared about this world. Like, I have
Agreed.
enough problems on my own that I'm trying to work through. I don't need to be worried about like all these other things. So I intentionally, that's where it becomes like personal responsibility. I'm like, what am I willing to put in, and what do I want to put out? And I
Mhm.
have to be the one that controls all of that.
I I love that you said that. And there was a time when, and I know you and I are probably closer in age, that where we grew up and we got to shut things down. Like we got to come home and watch cartoons after school and not be
Yeah.
bothered.
Yeah.
We didn't have to answer the phone. We didn't have, nothing was instantaneous. It was like, I remember going home legitimately and making a melted cheese sandwich with mayonnaise and watching Ghostbusters and not giving two shits about who wants to do what or who's calling. I just watched Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And then, and and then like the rundown of like all the shows, like the Wonder Years, watch that shit, like
Yeah.
it was on after school. That's what it did.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't care. Or I was out. And most of the time, I think for me, is that what I loved about it is that because I was so highly competitive in so many different sports, I didn't have to think about anything else. And when I think about the stress that I went through as a kid with other people showing up at my house, wanting to get into a fist fight, this, that, but they had to actually come to the house. And then my parents were like, get off my property. I don't have time for your shit. Right. So you had to have a lot more confidence than you do today. Like, am I going to show up to this person's house and be like, hey, I want to meet you outside? And if you're going to do that, make sure their parents aren't home, you know?
Hmm.
Because 9 times out of 10, like my dad is like, he's a mean little Caribbean man. He would like run out of the house and start spraying people with the hose, or he'd run out with his machete and be like, who's first? I just cut coconuts today,
Yeah.
And I was just like, and I'm like, Dad, don't do shit like that. And he's like, what? I don't have patience for this shit. Don't come to my house. Fight them at school.
It's different times. Yeah.
It is a different time, but that's my point, is that when we're talking about men and women, everybody needs this instant gratification. Everybody needs the likes. Everybody needs to know about your fucking story about how you and Johnny's date didn't work out and what he said to you, and oh my god, look, and then all the fakeness. People, I'm even guilty of it. I don't tell people all the bad things that go on social media. It's none of your friggin' business. And I don't want any influence. So I'll show you the pictures of like Christmas, 2025, and like the peace sign and the two
Yeah.
kids and we're all in, whatever. I'm not going to show everybody everything. Is that moment a happy moment? Absolutely. Am I lying about it? No, I'm just not showing you the other side because I don't think you're privy to it.
Yeah. And
Right.
yeah, and that's what the platform is intended for. It
Yeah.
is literally intended to be your highlight reel,
Yeah.
right? And so people just need to have that awareness. And like I said, I'll say it again. It's a matter of when you see that picture of that happy family and it makes you feel a certain way,
Yep.
you need to learn to understand, like, why do I feel that way about that picture?
It's true.
And that's where the change happens.
Mhm. No, it's true. I agree with you. We got to make sure our kids know that too, right?
100%.
Yeah, especially with the social media. But it is what it is, and you can only go so far down the rabbit holes of men and women and what they do. But I will say that I know that you guys do have a harder battle a lot of times, more so than women. And some women would be like, Lisa, what are you doing? And I'd be like, it's true. You know what? I've gone on a site where um, a male is consistently passed over, and he has put in his time and he has put in the work and he is treated like a workhorse, and he is consistently passed over for raises, for promotions, for whatever. And and a lot of them are scared to speak up and say, hey, I need an extra $10,000 a year. I've been here for 5 years. I've done what I said I was going to do. You guys have kept me at the same wage since I started. This is ridiculous. And they're scared to do that. And I'm like, don't be. Go tell them what, don't forget what you're worth. But then I think about that when I'm talking about what they're worth and telling employees that, like that are out there in the work world. And I forget that sometimes we need to remind ourselves of that with relationships of all kinds, friendships, whatever, everything. There is a price for your love and attention and all the things. If you want me to show up as my authentic self, I need to feel safe to do that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems like how many people do the highlight reel as a legitimate reel where it's all like acting. How many
Yeah.
influencers hate their fucking life, but are smiles, and the minute the camera goes off, they're crying, or they're
Mm-hmm.
angry, or they hate shit, or they're dealing with so much stuff that they don't even know how to do it. We don't see that raw side, but then at the same time, was that moment really happy or was that acting?
Yeah.
right? So when you're asking people to show up as their authentic selves, you got to really press through to see if that's really a thing for them. And like I said, people need to feel safe. Most men don't feel safe. They don't. And I don't know if that's ever going to change, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think it's both. I think the way that I would say it to kind of encompass everything is everybody's going through their struggle,
Yep.
right? If we were to pass a hat around and everybody put their problems in the hat and you picked some and you had to reach in and pick out a problem out of
Mm-hmm.
that hat, almost guarantee you'd be like, give me my problem back. Please give me my problem back. Right?
Yeah.
Men, women, just people, humans.
Yep.
We're all struggling. We're all going through shit. And I think if we can just learn to start to understand each other more, we will start to get more to the root of the problems and in turn the solutions, right?
Yeah. You're a lot nicer than me because I'll tell you right now, people are people. They're uncontrolled hazards. They're uncontrolled variables. And as much as, I mean, I can tell, Kyle, that you're probably more of a giver. I'm more of a giver. And givers are dangerous places to be because we don't know when not to give. We don't know how to say no half the time, and takers won't ever stop taking.
Yeah, I think I believe that. I think people naturally will take until you stop giving, but I
That's right.
don't think it's malicious. I think it's human nature that if I'm going to keep giving, it is in my nature to receive it, to continue to take it. That's where my personal responsibility comes in to start to understand myself when I've been burnt, when I've been hurt because I gave so much. Like it's a matter of like I'm not the victim. Like I don't give in with the expectation that somebody has to give back the same way that I gave. I give for my reasons to give.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I get hurt for it, my MO is to take responsibility for it.
Okay.
Okay, I got hurt. I got hurt. This sucked. I gave and it wasn't received well, or it wasn't given back in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, I still have to sit with it and accept the fact that like I gave for the reason that I gave. I showed up for the way that I wanted to show up authentically, and I can't control the outside things with that. I then have to learn where my boundaries are for
Mm-hmm.
myself, but again knowing that I can't control the next person that I give to,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm not going to change who I am just because person XYZ didn't accept it in the way that I was hoping for. It's like
So
giving without expectation.
yeah. Okay. I'm going to agree and not agree on certain things. So I
Sure.
agree that you have to take some accountability and dig through why you feel that you were burnt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you gave, so this is where I disagree with you. If you gave and then put up a boundary and said no more, and that person turned against you and fucked you over, that's a them problem. You just dodged a bullet to giving more to someone who's an asshole and is unwilling to take on a boundary because they thought that they could just keep walking all over you like a piece of shit. So you put in a boundary and they got all upset and ass hurt about it and then tried to make you feel like you're the bad person. So what's the lesson? The lesson is maybe don't give so much right up front. Maybe start putting in some boundaries. You know what? I'm happy to do this time. Little disclaimers. Sure, no problem. I'm happy to do it this time. It's going to make the person think. But we as givers have to learn that term. I've had to do so much work around being able to say, like, I mean, my other half gives me shit all the time. He's like, you always do this. You meet somebody and then they're like your new best friend, and the novelty is just like, I love them. They're so wonderful. And he's like, and then you give, and then they fuck you over every time.
Hmm.
And I'm like, eh. I'm like, do they
Yeah.
fuck me
Yeah.
over? Because that's not a me problem. That's a
No,
them
yeah.
problem. Do you
No,
know what I mean? Like,
I agree with what you're saying, Lisa. The part that stuck out to me though is okay, so we learn this person burnt me. I'm gonna now set a boundary with this person.
mhm,
Everybody's unique. Each relationship, each interaction is going to be unique. But
yep.
what you said was they made me feel like shit because of how they received it. And that's where I think the key is.
Mhm,
Why am I allowing them to make me feel like shit?
yep.
Because I did something good that felt good for me, right? It's like love, right? Love is a feeling. And the interesting thing with love is if you don't feel like you're receiving love in your
Mhm,
life, and that's making you feel sad, go out and give it.
mhm,
Give love to people. because the interesting thing is that feeling of love is there in the transaction. It's not a when you go and you give a homeless person money because it feels good for you, you feel love in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? If somebody comes and gives you money because they see you're struggling, you will feel love, that same love in that moment. And so I think it's in that terms of like, they made me feel like shit. It's like, that's where we need to start to learn to draw a line of like, no, you don't get to make me feel anything. I did what I did because that felt authentically right for me.
Right. So by doing that, then that's exactly what I'm saying to you
Yeah.
too, in my own way. But at the same time, they make you feel that way. When I say that, it's an interesting concept. So just hear me out on this last little part here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I give. They take. I say, I don't have any more to give right now. And they go, well, you've never had a problem before. What's the problem now? And they become somewhat hostile, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's in their language, whether it's in their demeanor, whether it's in their delivery, there's some hostility. And right away, something that I enjoy doing, I no longer enjoy doing right now. So now my feelings I'm feeling very attacked.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I don't like this. I
Yeah.
did this for you because I wanted to. And now all of a sudden, I don't want to do it right now, or I can't do it right now, and I'm being scolded
Mm-hmm.
for not being able to give you something, but you've never given me anything in return, and nor have I expected you to give me anything in return. And then they'll twist. Right? A lot of takers will twist. Well, now what do you want? Now do I owe you things? Or they'll keep tabs. When they do
Mm-hmm.
give you something, they're like, "Oh, do you remember when I bought lunch last week? It's your turn."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, do you remember when I bought lunch like the last 50 fucking times and you bought it once? You
Yeah.
know,
I
like
think
that's
that's where
kind of what I want to
yeah.
say sometimes to people, but I'm like, nope. I'm like, oh yeah, we'll go Dutch.
Yeah. And that's where the boundary comes in,
Yeah.
right? That's where the boundary comes in. Like, hey, you don't even, I mean, boundaries are an interesting thing in themselves, and we probably don't have time to get into them, but
Nope. We'll have to do
like,
another one.
yeah, but I do. I think that's where the boundary comes in. And, the one thing I'll say about boundaries is boundaries aren't a request, boundaries are an action. And so it's like, that's where you go, okay, this situation has now come up. It doesn't feel good. I'm going to start to set a boundary with this particular person, but that doesn't mean that I necessarily have to change. Sally might be very accepting of the nice things that I want to do for her, even
Mhm.
though Tim,
Mhm.
was a total jerk about it. Now I'm setting a boundary with Tim, but doesn't mean I need to change the way I approach everybody. It's just I'm going to now set a boundary with this particular relationship.
I love that you said that. Thank you for saying that, because it's true. You can't when you get into those feelings where you feel that someone has screwed you over, or they have, or whatever the case may be, you can't go at everybody that's what's going to happen. You can't judge everybody with the same pen. Can't
Yeah.
write them off. You got to just let people show you who they are. And then I always tell people, like I say it to my kids, I'm like, honey, when someone does something to you, that's not a reflection of them, that's a reflection of you. If you've been a good friend and you've given, a lot of time, love, and heart, and tried to nourish this relationship with your friend or whatever, and they have rejected it in some way, it's not a reflection of you. It's maybe something they don't need right now, or they don't know how to handle, or they don't know how to accept. And that is what people need to remember and take away, that when you're rejected, it doesn't mean that you've done necessarily something wrong, unless you can point out exactly what you've done wrong. But a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the person. They're not
Mm-hmm.
ready for that type. Like, you've seen the reels where people are in really abusive relationships, and then they're in healthy relationships, and they still, like, they have so much PTSD that they're like, what's happening? It's like
Yeah.
their phone rings and they're like, oh, can you answer that for me? And they're like, what? You want me to answer your phone? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, and I mean, like, that's just one of those things. But no, I agree with you. I mean, the male female dynamic will be a forever thing. I truly believe. I don't think it'll never be. People always have to find something to fight about on some level. I think men and women can, coexist quite contently, and they each bring something special to the table.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a male dominated industry or in a female dominated industry, it doesn't matter. Men and women bring a lot of great things to either side. So,
Yeah.
but people just need to stop campaigning.
Yeah. And we just need to have conversations like this that are open and real and honest, and know that I might be completely wrong. You might be completely wrong, but the conversation, the curiosity around it, I think is where the magic happens.
Agreed. I totally agree with you. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thank you. This was so fun. I really, really enjoyed it.
You know what? I really enjoyed it too. So, I mean, let's see here. So you've got a podcast of your own. Please repeat the name of your podcast.
So it's the Wellness Dojo podcast.
Okay. So for those of you that want to look up Kyle, you can find him there. He also has his own dojo in Calgary. What's some contact information for your dojo in Calgary?
Yeah, so just wellnessdojo.ca. You can look it up there. Martial arts classes that we offer, and wellness coaching, speaking opportunities, all that kind of stuff. So
That's amazing. And thank you for being on the show and writing the book Good Grief and talking about the identity kind of crisis that you went through after divorce. I think that's a really big topic and men need to talk more about it. People need to talk more about it because they do their identities are very attached to their relationships, especially when you're doing them young, right?
yeah,
So I think that's a great topic. So if you haven't bought the book Good Grief, go out and get it. Other than that, you can find Kyle in Calgary under his wellness dojo and his podcast. Thank you again so much, Kyle.
yeah. Thank you so much. This was awesome, and keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
Oh, thank you so much. And I guess we'll catch you guys all on the flip side. So don't do anything crazy.